Well, I started at Fort Sheridan, Illinois. We went on maneuvers in Louisiana. Then from there, England, and from there, in the invasion. We were in Germany, and we had to make a river crossing. It was such a dangerous mission that they didn't send any officers because it was a thing that whoever went across would hardly be able to get back. And during this operation, I was hit by a shell fragment from a tree burst. I was still unconscious, laying there in a pool of blood. And I guess a lot of people thought I was dead because there no movement, nothing. But this friend of mine came along and he noticed that I was still alive, so he got me across the river. Then from there, I went to a hospital in France, and I was just about ready to recuperating. The Battle of the Bulge broke out, and anybody who was able to stand out of bed was sent back to the Bulge. The military, it was kind of a fun thing for me, I'm going to enjoy it, and that's the way it was.
When I went in the Navy, I went in the supply division on the USS Rio Grande, AOJ-3, and I became a cook real quick. I was a seaman first class while I was on that ship. Then I became a second class when I became a corpsman. I was proud of it, very proud. I enjoyed the Navy. I wanted to stay in and become a chief. I had one experience where we had an OR set up, the doctors and Marines, and it could have been a Marine, it could have been an Army doctor, it could have been a Navy doctor, but 3 Koreans, North Korean soldiers, cut a cable on the tent and tossed grenades in the OR. Killed one of the victims, one of the patients that was on the table. The other 2 who were setting aside, they just had their operations and they were doing little recoveries so they could go back to their unit. I wanted to help people more.
Well, Bob and I have been together for 38 years, and when I first met him, I knew he served in Korea, but I didn't know how it affected him until probably 5 years later. He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. He had night sweats and night terrors. He started seeing someone at the VA, a psychologist, and found out that when he was the medic, that he's very proud to say that he was a medic, but the horrors of the things he saw were causing severe issues to where he's been diagnosed with PTSD. He doesn't talk about his emotions easily. I know that there was one story he told me that when he went from the ship to land, he fell out of a transport ship and they picked him up by his belt loop to save him from drowning. I only found that out after one evening when we were sound asleep, and he must have thought I was one of the bad guys because he was hitting me. And I called his psychiatrist and I said, you've got to do something to help him because whatever's going on is getting worse. It took Bob probably 40, 50 years to come to that point to admit that there was something wrong. I can only imagine what he has seen in his life.
I was in the Army and I was a nurse, and when I got done I was a first lieutenant. So my first assignment was in Tacoma, Washington at Madigan General Hospital, and then I was there about 6 months before I got my orders to go to Vietnam. So I was used to seeing patients with horrific wounds and amputees and that kind of thing. And being at Walter Reed, one of the things, we had a whole ward that was nothing, it was an orthopedic ward, but almost every patient there was an amputee of one sort or another. I spent a lot of night duty, and our shifts at that time were 12 hours, 7 to 7. And so if we had a POW as a patient on our ward, the other patients, our own soldiers, did not sleep very well. And so I struck up a conversation with this young man, and he had gone to New Orleans just before he shipped out to come to Vietnam. And so he had gotten these simple plastic beads that had been thrown off the Mardi Gras floats, but that was his good luck charm. And he wanted to give those to me, and I said, no, 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 no. That's your good luck charm. You need to keep those with you. He goes, no, I want you to take them. And we had this sort of running argument, but I finally gave in and took those beads. And less than a week later, I found out he had been killed. And so for a long time, I have felt like, if he had kept those beads, would he have made it through? You just never know. The military gave me a pride in my country, an appreciation of my country. It gave me a big perspective of what was serious and what wasn't.
United States Marine Corps veteran, 1987 and 1991. I went into food service specialist, 3381. My dream was to become a chef. So, the Marine Corps had told me that they had a culinary program that I could go into. The recruiters came and picked me up. The one thing I will never forget is when I was sitting in the back seat and I looked over and I saw my mom crying at the screen door. And that's one of the images that I had through boot camp that kind of motivated me, like, I can't let my mom down. Going through boot camp and all that, it kind of molded me into a lot of habits that I have now. Getting up early, being ready, being prepared. One thing that always stands out in my mind from the military, Staff Sergeant Baker. That guy is probably the biggest influence I've had in my life besides my grandma or my dad. And this guy was passionate, and he would always challenge you. And it wasn't once in a while, it was every day you came to work. I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken from my military career was, the passion to do what I do now. My youngest brother, he passed away at an early age of leukemia at 26. So being away from him when he was younger, and missing him grow up and stuff like that, that's one thing that I wish I would have got to spend more time with him. But having the title of Marine is one of the most powerful things, something I can hang my hat on.
I was in the Air Force and Illinois Air National Guard. I was a munitions systems specialist. I was exited at an E5, Staff Sergeant. After basic training, I went to Texas Shepherd Air Force Base, then did my tech school there, and then got stationed at Hurlburt Field. From Hurlburt Field, I had many deployments around the world. I deployed 9 times in 4 years, twice to the desert, over to Italy, Spain, some other very cool places. I definitely had a lot of trips there. And then once in the Air National Guard, then I went to the desert again from there. Serving my country is something I've always wanted to do. Growing up, I knew I was going to join the military in some fashion or some form. Probably the most memorable, scary situation was I was in an armed standoff with allies, which is kind of a strange thing to be involved with when you don't speak the same language and you may look like a foreign national or something. You have a gun pointed at you, and at the same time you're pointing a gun back with nothing that you can do. You're just knowing that there's no way to end this until you get somebody that can translate. And having that breakdown in communication so close to home and with somebody you're supposed to be working with is definitely a challenge, a struggle. It was scary in the time, but it helped me to appreciate the importance of communication and to ensure everybody knows who everyone is and what you're doing, why you're there. I think my proudest moment is when I graduated basic and my parents were there. Because my parents, aside from basic training and graduation, they never got to see me in uniform. When I was in active duty, I was in special ops, so a lot of the time we didn't take pictures. We deployed out of uniform. No one knew when we were deploying, when we were coming back. I would pick up the phone and call my mom and say, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm leaving town, and she knew not to ask where I was going or when I would be back. Yeah, the lessons I learned through service were many. Integrity being one of the biggest ones. You always want to do what you're supposed to be doing, when you're supposed to be doing it, when no one's around. The other thing is camaraderie, the brotherhood that you get and gain through serving with many people that you don't know from around the country and around the world. You become bonded with them like you never will with anything else.